Hi, my name is Jim Wilson. I'm a professional martial arts instructor from London, England. I started my martial arts training in 1963 in judo, and then in 1965 I started karate, and not long after that I started training in kendo, the way of the sword warrior. In 1972 I was a member of the Budokai kendo team that won the British National Kendo Championships. In this tape, entitled The Official Guide to Beginners Kendo and Iaido, we'll introduce you and show you some of the basic moves, footwork, handwork, how to hold the shinai. Well, in this case it's bokken, which is a wooden imitation sword. We'll show you how to use that, how to move, how to practice, and how to do strengthening exercises. Because this is a beginner's video, we are not going to use the kendo armor. We're going to show you the individual moves, how to perform the cuts, and how to perform the parries and movements with a partner very carefully, using the wooden sword. The bokken is an oak sword. It is a dangerous weapon. Please be careful when you use it. Also, use it outdoors. Make sure there's nobody else around. Tell everybody that you're going to be practicing with it. Check that it's clear for you to use it. If you decide to work with a partner, you must both come to the agreement to go very, very slowly and cautiously. This is a dangerous weapon. Okay, the development of kendo came about in Japan, in feudal Japan, when the samurai, who were normally liege to the daimyo, who were local lords, and local lords would be liege to the shogun, the samurai were allowed to carry swords, and they were allowed to own property, and they fought on behalf of the daimyos, who fought on behalf of the shogun, who was the ruler of Japan. The samurai wanted to perfect their fighting skills. They originally fought on horseback, and the bow or kyudo was the main weapon. Later on, the sword developed and became the main weapon. Originally, when they were on horseback, they would fight with the sword, and they found the sword was only usable with one hand and quite unwieldy. When they dismounted from the horse and they came onto the foot, they then found they could use the sword two-handed, and they could cut. Now, the samurai trained in sword fighting to kill or maim opponent. Very unlike Western pi fencing or something, epee fencing or cutler, where we normally train to do a cut. Within, samurai trained with a katana to attack another samurai who was wearing armor. And he'd have a headpiece, he'd have a breast protection, he'd have protection here, sometimes he'd have protection on the calves, and he'd certainly have protection on here. So there are very specific cuts that we'll do. Now, the samurai used to train in the beginning with real katana, with real swords, and a lot of injuries, a lot of deaths came about. To give that an element of safety, they developed the bokken, and they carried on training with this particular weapon here. And this is an oak representation of a real sword, of a real katana. Later on, they created the shinai and the replacement armor, and you see that in the later video. And that was allowing them to train and develop their technique with greater safety. Samurai was very valuable to the daimyo, and he didn't want to lose them or have them injured during training. So the shinai was introduced. But the bokken still continued to be used for training purposes, and we'll be using it today. So, as I said earlier, please take care. The samurai and the katana were very, very closely linked. The main aim of the samurai was to become one with the sword, develop the zanchin, which is the special training fighting mind, and in battle to become completely one with the sword and to be able to down as many opponents as possible. And to do that, he practiced incessantly, always challenging himself, always moving forward. We're going to show you some of the basic techniques that you can practice as the introduction moves on. First one is the samurai always kept the sword away, and it was held in the right hand if they were ever visiting anywhere, and held in this position here, and it would be in the scabbard because it meant that it was difficult for them to get the sword out to fight. Usually when they entered a house, they'd leave it outside and they'd take the small sword in with them. If they passed somebody, they would always bow, put their hand out and hold the sword back. indicating that they were not taking offensive movement. And I suggest when you train, you keep that awareness in mind at all times. The first of the exercises, we're learning basically coming down into the basic position, walking at the side, back straight from here. The bowing position, bring your hands forward and down. And we bow. Come back up. The walking is taken from here and move it across to this position here. We then step forward, step back. If you have no sash on the belt, the normal position for holding the training for the bokken is this position there. And that moves down there with the cutting edge up here. The drawing of the position, the hand on here, is always made in two movements. The first is the grasp with the sword, and it's twisted out with the grasp. And the second is the draw, the pulling out. Two movements, the grasp and the draw. So let's look first of all how the sword is held. If we take the handle of the sword here and the guard, which is called the tsuba, the hand slots into this position here, just there, a little bit like holding a golf club, and the other one comes behind it there and holds it there. The important thing to realize that when you're working with the bokken or a katana, that you only hold it with the one finger, this position here. It's all it's ever really held with. The rest of the hands, the grip is very, very loose, and it could fall out quite easily. If I take it there, it can be pulled quite easily. Only the small finger holds it there, this position there. Here we have the tsuba, which is the guard position where the hands are. And this is the handle. We'll avoid Japanese terms for the time being. Holding the bokken forward is the cutting position here. Now, we demonstrate that. The left hand comes on top into the center line. So the center line of the thumb is moving into the center line of the bokken. Now the bokken is a substitute sword. And the rest of the handle moves up here, and the other hand goes behind it and in line. It gives you the correct holding position. When we hold it in line, we're holding it forward, and shoulders are down, balance is perfectly central, and the eyes are forward, and the eyes are meeting the eyes of your opponent. Here. The right foot comes forward, it's flat, and the left foot pushes you up and forward to your opponent here. The tip of the bokken points to this area here. There. This position here. So let's go over that again. We're holding it here, this position here. The other hand is holding it here, and we're holding it, grasping it just with a finger. The other hand is coming on here, and we're holding it. Now, a very important thing. The hands are not out in this position. They're quite forward. But with all strikes, with the bokken, it's followed with a slice, except for the thrust, which we call tsuke. Now, when we strike, we focus by twisting in this position this way here, twisting on here. And I'll demonstrate that to you by using a towel. The towel will allow me to demonstrate to you the correct action. When the hand is forward here, and when the strike is coming down, and the strike is made, we have this twisting motion. I'm exaggerating the motion, but it's a twisting against each other. Left hand out, right hand out, twisting away. This way here. So when we come down, we're twisting there. This action here. Always, on all cuts. Twist, twist, twist. Using the bokken, we'll explain the twisting on the hitting again. The left hand holding at the back, the right hand in the front. As the twist moves in here, it locks. It locks. So what becomes a loose movement on striking hits hard. The reason we don't hold the sword firm all the time is it limits the way the sword can move. The arms become stiff. Everything must be relaxed. total relaxation. The only thing holding the sword is the little finger. That'll be explained a little bit later on. When we're hitting the sword or when we're moving, we're using this finger and to control it and hold it, and the rest, the other fingers and the front hand are controlling the sword and the movement. Only on contact do we lock it to make the sword very, very strong. So that all the shock and all the movement, the sword doesn't bounce off, it cuts deep. When the sword is cut deep, we then slice. Slice forward or we slice back. But we always slice after a cut. I'd like you to introduce my assistant for today, Dominique. And Dominique's going to demonstrate using a bow the reasons why the grip, we have the grip the specific way using the bow, the shinai or the katana. Why we hold with a small finger, why the grip is loose and not firm. Now, I'll keep the bokken straight, pointing at the throat, and as Dominique takes the bow to that side there and strikes hard against here. Okay, again, harder. Again, harder. Okay, again, harder. Okay, again, harder. Okay, really hard. Okay, go the other side. Strike again, hard. Again, hard. Okay, harder. Really hard. Take it all the way back this time and really hit it as hard as you can. Okay. You see how we hold with this, and each time, although it's the bokken is hit, it springs straight back up again. This is the only one holding it. Now, I'll clench it really tight. Same thing. Now take it, hit it. Okay, again, clench it tight. I lose control. Okay, I'll try to bring it back to the center, take it right out. I'll clench tight. I'm losing control. I don't have movement there. And also when I'm clenched tight like this, when I want to move another move, everything is stiff. So hit it really hard this time. We're in for the strike. Okay? This is how we're doing the movement. Right foot forward, heel up. Let's see that from the side. Right foot forward, flat, heel up on the left. Weight going forward. There's the position here. Moving into here. Move forward in the same position. We start to learn the basic cuts. The first cut is the center of the head. This is called men. The cutting action is done by bringing the sword up, 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 up. Now, sometimes it can go right down over the back to hit, but usually it goes to this position here, about 30, 40 degrees, and then cuts down to here. The first cut, the men cut. We do the men cut, up and strike. As we finish the strike, from here, we lock. Second of the men cuts, hadari, which is the left, and migi, which is the right. We bring the sword up. We don't do this, slashing this way. The cut is controlled up by tilting the lower hand across to the side from here. So, cutting here, up, tilting it, and that allows the strike to the side. Up, we take it the other way, allows the strike. Up, so we're controlling it here. Like this. Good. Now, moving forward, we start to use the footwork. From here, when we move the foot, we move from this position here, almost like a small skipping jump. The movement is here, slightly forward. The right foot on the attack and the left on the retreat. These steps can be done short, forward and back, or they be done long. Of course, you can vary the length depending on how far the opponent is, how you wish to vary the movement forward or back from here. You can be moving to the sides to vary the side movements, moving forward, but it's always moved here on this. We also have walking. Walking is this position there. Walk from here, there. And we have straight forward walking, straight back walking. To coordinate that, to coordinate the cut, we begin to learn the first of the techniques. We take the bokken there, holding here, bring it up to the chiranokamai, which is the on guard position, pointing here at the throat, the tsuki area, where we thrust to. From here, we bring the sword up, and this time we bring it up right over the top. And as we come down, we move forward. And then we bring the sword right up again, and we step back. Up, forward, and back. Forward, and back. Forward, back. This exercise is done for a considerable time, depending on your fitness. Build up 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, using here, and start to develop a rhythm from here. The rhythm. Now, same exercise, up, cut, to the side, back, to the side, 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 and then we start to develop a rhythm. Then from here we start to move. A strengthening exercise you can use when you're doing your movement back and forth is to bring yourself into position, bokken forward, bring it right over the back so it's all the way down, and then all the way to the floor. Remember, always to lock. Same thing applies up as we step back to the floor. Up and down to the floor. Always with the lock. And the lock. And the lock. Exaggerated movement, allowing you to build strength. You can also build strength by doing the same exercise, using the single hand down, bringing it back, single hand down, bringing it back. Same exercise can be done the other side. Bring it down, back, bring it down, back. These are only strengthening exercises to help strengthen the wrist, strengthen the arms, strengthen the shoulders. From here, remember, ringing exercise here. Just practice ringing the bokken every time, strengthening the forearms, strengthening the grip. This will help you in your training. Then back to the exercise of up and cut forward, cut back, cut forward, cut back, cut forward, cut back, and then to the side, 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 side. Now, men is the center cut in the head. We have left side, which is called hidari men, and migi men, which is the right. The next motion, after we cut, we would slice forward or slice back. One exercise that we also have to help to strengthen your wrists is you can always take the bokken in this position there and move it side to side. Just move it here. There. Same thing the other hand, just side to side. Side to side. Now, moving on the attacking techniques, we have a thrust here. This is called ski. The thrust is for the center part here. The armor the Japanese wore, they would have the helmet piece here covering right down across the shoulders, and they'd have a throat piece hanging down here. The ski was designed, the thrust was designed to come underneath the guarding plate there and up into the throat. So it's not a push down like that. It's a push that goes up, that way. Okay? The push goes up that way. So from here, there, thrusting ski into the throat. We have a technique where we attack the side of the arm. A glove would be worn here, it'd be kote. And we'd be attacking onto the kote, trying to hit it along the join lines of the stitch lines, trying to damage the wrist. Even damaging the wrist just with the blow of the sword. Breaking the bones, striking them here without the cut if we're unable to pierce the armor. A lot of the times when we're hitting onto the head, it wouldn't pierce the armor straight away, but it would be enough to shock the samurai, and he'd be straight into another cut, cutting into a vulnerable open area. After the ski, cut here, we can move down to cut for kote. Kote cut is quite simple. It's the same thing, cut to the side. So from here, we lift up and we're moving to the side. Up to the side. Kote is also, if we're fighting this way here, we cut this position here. We would cut up with the kote, cutting high, cutting the wrist high in this position here. We also cut across the do area. There'd be a breastplate of armor coming across here. And normally, samurai didn't cut this area here because there would be a short sword in here protecting this area. So they would cut this area. They would cut from here, and normally this from here. And they would slice through by pushing through. Okay, from here, now we have a do cut, which is cutting across this area here. This area here being protected with a sword. Sometimes we may cut further around to the back. The sword would come from here and cut there. Then we slice through as we move through. Any cut performed was always followed by a slice, either forward or back. If I ask my assistant Dominique to come forward, who is a complete beginner of Kendo, I'll be able to demonstrate some of these moves with her. Okay, I will demonstrate the cuts, the thrust, and the various hits and the slices on Dominique without her holding the bokken for the time being. Then she'll hold the bokken. I'll explain the control positions and the distancing you need to have. Now please be very careful when you're working together with a bokken or a shinai. A lot of damage and injury can be inflicted, so they make these moves very slowly. First, we'll work in the thrust. The thrust moves from here, there, and then it slides up and back. Moves in, slides up and back. And we're striking here. Now we're doing the men cut. Up and straight to the forehead here. Sometimes the cut is also dealt to the back of the head. Moving forward, controlling always, using the tip to control this area here. So the sword tip controls there. Wherever your opponent moves, your partner moves, if you move to the right, you follow to the right. You move to the left, follow to the left. If you step a little bit back, you move back, step forward, you can be moving back, controlling the distance. So the straight head, the men cut here, up, and we strike this position here. After the strike, we then drive it forward for the cut. Cut there. And then, if possible, we bring the cut back down the other way. We have the side cut, side of the head. Hidari to the left. Mige to the right. And these are always followed with, again, slice. We have the next move, which is lift your hands up, please. We're going to cut across here. Now remember, there would be a sword, smaller sword, protecting this area there. So we tend not to strike in there with the armor moving down. So we'd be striking across this area here. The move would come up, and we tend to cut here, cutting along the line where the armor sat. And that would move to that, slicing across the front. One more time, we move in, cut, and the slice moves across the armor line, and we can walk through. we have a cut to this position here, which is the kote cut, when the swords are up. If the hands are up in this position, here, fighting here, we're striking here. And that's kote, it's wrist cut. Same if the hands are forward, here, and the sword is out, we'll cut into the side of the wrist. And the same thing applies. As we cut, we would use the slice. Another cut, over the head cut to men. Hand comes up here. This is a one-handed cut. And the bokken is taken over, forward, 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 and normally hits quite high at the top here, trying to split the back plate of the armor. So this tends not to be done with a slice. All other techniques except for tsuke and this technique are done with the slice, the cut and the slice. So from here we come up, sword is up, again we're striking here and over the top in that position there. Okay, thank you. Alright, now we'll do the same movements against the bokken. Now, everything is controlled with the tip. The tip of the sword, this small area here, is controlling the movement. In the fighting, there's very subtle pressures are put here, very tiny pressures here. Movement there. This allows, for here for example, up, and then it would allow a cut down here. Same slight movement there up would allow a strike into the head. Same sidle movement there up would allow to here or to here. From the same position again, ski, up, glancing at the side, up into the throat. So moving the sword out of my direction, up here. Or we may use, also on the blade, slight pressure here, touching here, and sometimes it's tapped. It's a very slight tap. Everything is very relaxed from here. We're moving here, slight tap. After the tap, the movement, up, and the strike. Also the movements can be here from this way, moving up, again, striking kote. Sometimes the movements are here, from this position here. They might come up, open up, strike. Sometimes the position is, as you lift yours up, strike. Sometimes onto the knee, pulling across this position, cutting. From here, this is another fighting position from here. Bring the sword down, pointing always to this position here. This is also a defensive position. This position is used at a greater distance than this, from here. And again, we can use this movement here for cutting up, underneath, from here, and normally we take and strike. Sometimes the movement is from here, holding position, again, normally from a greater distance. And this can be, same time, cutting, over, strike. Sometimes the sword is here, from this position here, fighting here, coming in, open up, strike. Sometimes the sword is held down here, opens up, strike. Sometimes just a tiny pressure there, opens it completely up, and strike. Moving here. Now, with the strike, sometimes I walked, sometimes I shuttled this side, sometimes I shuttled that side. Normally, all fighting's done in this position, but there's a lot of leeway in the movements from here. Now, blocking, when the block comes from the other person begins to move the sword to attack me, we just turn it down. From that position, up, and strike. Slicing. Again, lift up to strike, block, from here, over, push through, and strike. Again, strike, and over the top. There. So, blocking positions you have from here, blocking men, strike. Blocking, do, strike. From this position here, deflections, deflections. Sometimes small deflections, twisting the wrist, twisting the wrist. From here, take up, and from here, take up. From this position here, we can be cutting up, strike. We have the blocks. We have an upper block moving in, striking. We have this block moving in, striking. Sometimes we're blocking here, but very rarely do we block on this side because it's covered from here. We have turning blocks, sometimes just a little slight movement. Sometimes sliding there, sliding the movement up to take the move. From here, we may block and then over, attack. From here, we may block and over, attack. From here, we may block and over, attack. We may block and drop, attack. From here, we may block and strike under. From here, or we may block, strike over, pull back, thrust forward. Many times when the samurai are fighting, you'll see this movement here. Very slight pressure, tiny pressure each. There. Now, if I'll ask Dominique to take her blocking right to the side, take it right to the side, and to strike this one as hard as possible. Strike hard. Immediately comes back to the center position. Strike hard. We're ready to cut. Here, okay? Strike hard. Okay? Always controlling, always very small, subtle movements. Again, strike really hard. Down, step forward. Attack. Cut. Pull back. Moving in. Okay, demonstrating cut. Again, pressure as I put pressure this time. A little bit of pressure. I start to put more pressure, and cut onto the kote. Again, I put more pressure, more pressure, more pressure, more pressure. I'm up to attack the head. Again, I may be here, open it up completely. Then I can attack it well. I may come from down this way and strike and back again. I may move my sword up. Dominique lifts hers up to block. She's lifting it up this way to block. There. I'm coming in for kote. I may strike kote, pull it up, strike, pull it down, come forward, ski underneath. So there was always multiple cuts. Always multiple cuts. If the cut was lucky enough to hit first, they would be happy. If they came here, they may be hitting for the head point. There, they may hit, it may be blocked. From here, if Dominique comes in, hits for my head, I block. She takes it back and hits again. Okay, I block. She takes it back to hit again. Okay, I block. They all blocks. She takes it back to hit again. And then I ski. Thrust. Again, hands down. She lifts up to hit me with, and I attack. Straight in. Cutting across. From here, we do the same. And we move close, close, close. Then up close. We use this area here, and we just push each other to play. Always again, this subtle movement, looking for the opportunity to open up and strike. Again, same thing again, looking for the opportunity. From here, we may grab there, and then opens up and strikes. We may come in again from here. We may come in this way. We may be fighting from here. We may position here, touching here, touching. We may attack from here and thrust, ski, open, ski, in. Movements. Now, those very simple techniques using sword drawing, which was the iaido. The samurai would have the sword placed in the band at the side. They'd have another smaller sword here, and it would be kept in this position. They would have to be in the position to draw the sword very quickly. The sword was grasped, this position here, grasp it, turn it. This holds the scabbard. The thumb comes here, ready to, at the side, to push the sword out of the scabbard. They're just pushing on the tsuba. At the same time would be a slight turn. So we'd be pushing it there, and the comes out, out, out. Now the movement from here would almost be quick. And at the end with a snap. And that's where the kime is. So we're pulling out from here. We may be cutting in this position from here. From this position here. Cutting. We're standing here. The hand is on there. And the draw. The movement back. Over. There. Put it back in the scabbard. And recite it. We can practice the draw with the bokken, not using the real katana. There are practice katanas you can buy, but at the beginning it's best to practice with the ordinary bokken. The sword draw was a bit like the Westerners, where the gunslinger pulled the gun. The samurai had to pull the sword. Sword could be used in many ways. If I borrow Dominic again, from here we could be moving this way. So I'm attacking with the hilt here. Attack with the hilt, and then I would carry on, continue, up, and then strike the throat out. Normal motion was to slight movement here to allow any blood or tissue hopefully to come off, and then the sword could be put back into the scabbard if necessary. If the sword was out, it meant there was going to be a fight. So the sword was always kept in. Hand was kept on here, and if a samurai passed another one, he would normally put his hand out and bow to let him know there was no aggression meant. If he walked this way and passed a samurai and hit him with a sword, that's a guaranteed fight. Very, very rude thing to do. So sword drawing could be, for example, we could be in a seated position from here. Again, sitting here, everything applies. Two motions, 1, 2. The next motion, cut. Cut. So we have one cut, moving over, cut. Moves back, in, inserting it back, moving back, sitting again. Same motion again, moving here, cutting, side, cutting, side, up, moving it to the side, putting it in, up, into the scabbard, down and back. Lots of variations of cuts. There are as many variations in the iaido cuts as there are in situations. And some of the situations where borrow Dominic again could be, Dominic is there. In this instance we'll pretend that she also has a sword here. She's ready to draw her sword. Okay, if we're moving here, action has begun to, Dominic starts to grab her sword. Okay, we move it from this position here, up with our sword, turning her up, 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 cutting, 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 cutting. Again, the sword could be here from this position here. She goes to take her sword, hitting, moving back, and striking. She could be pulling her sword completely out and then striking here before cutting across. She could pull her sword completely out, 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 ready to strike over the top, and as I strikes down, I block. Step, strike. Strike, slice, move, strike. Back, down. If we were close in here, and my sword wasn't, and your sword, and Dominic got her sword out, say she was just bringing your sword out, and she came in, I would always catch here, this area here. And then using that there, use the same twist that we do, we twist open to take it off. Up, strike, cut, back. Okay, that's a basic example of some iaido techniques. We do plan a tape covering a full range of iaido techniques at a later date. I'd like to talk about some of the fundamental psychological elements that the samurai would use during their fighting situation. Now, we have to recall that they were fighting for life or death situations. one of the most important principles was a terminology called zanshin. That is a state of readiness and preparedness and being ready at all times for the opportunity to strike at any point during a fight. But zanshin is also having a little bit like saying being switched on to a dangerous situation. If you're in zanshin, for example, if we were simply head down and looking at the floor, and I was concentrating on the floor and excluding everything else, I would not be in zanshin. But if I was looking at the floor, but at the same time using my peripheral vision to check everything out and being aware of any movement around me, I would be in zanshin. And zanshin is also used in fighting and in combat situation, and we'll go to that. Second one is gono-sen. Gono-sen is seizing the initiative after the counterattack. After somebody is attacked, we strike or block and we seize the initiative immediately. And that's used very frequently. We allow the other person to attack, to become confident, to commit themselves. Once they have committed themselves, we open up, we then seize that opportunity of commitment. Commitment to attack, we can take advantage of that with sen-ho-sen. When an individual starts to commit themselves to attack, when they're focused on the attack, we can forestall them. We can just read their body language, read the movement, read the way they are, and we can forestall them by simply moving, by adjusting ourselves, by focusing there. We've often seen the samurai movies where the individual stands and they're facing each other for quite a long time. Well, there's all an element of zanshin there, and then there's the element of they're wondering what is going to happen. Well, in fact, they don't wonder what is going to happen. They bond with their sword as oneness, and they move towards the target, or they stay and they just wait. And almost like water that would wrap around a rock, they'll react to whatever the situation is, and that's what they're trying to do. So these fundamental psychological principles, when you're using them, the easiest way to do it is just keep focused on the target, focused all the time. But you must not think about winning, and you must not think about losing. You only consider the action. You're involved in the action, you consider no more. You react as opportunities arise, or you react as threats arise. You seize initiatives when they're there, and you block initiatives when they're moving forward. And there's a lot done in that, a lot of psychological, very small things. Eyes can tell it, slight movements, the tip of the sword can do it, slight body variations to put a person off. There's lots of these elements used, and it's used within the fighting. If you take up Kendo correctly and you wear the armor and the sparring, you'll begin to develop them more and more. Okay, zanshin awareness. If we were both in protective position here, and a zanshin situation could be quite simply this. The eyes could meet, there could be a slight problem, somebody could start to move forward, but just as she's moving forward, they step back, she moves forward again. Stop! Okay, this is a no-zen situation. We've interrupted the flow of the movement just by doing that. We'll use ki-ai, and I'll explain ki-ai as well. And that time I used a command, but it's not necessary to say a word. It interrupts the flow. Then I can take advantage of that again. We'll do it again. I would say stop. That would allow me the interruption there. Take my sword out. Up. And finish. I've taken advantage by interrupting the flow of the other person's movement. And we can do that when we're fighting as well. Zanshin, if we're facing each other here, we're waiting, and we're looking at each other, and we're waiting for the movement, then if Dominic goes to move slightly, again move, we can just slightly move out the way, beginning to interrupt her flow. Again, if she's moving here, we can take the initiative out, and she goes to move again, and boom, we attack in. We're keeping all the time focused on the target, any slight move they make, looking for the opportunity to attack. Now, should this sword come out, and Dominic in this instance does decide to commit to attack, she commits to a Jordan attack, and I moved her out here, I take the initiative immediately and strike. Once she has totally committed herself, okay, from here, and strike. Now, when I'm fighting, there are two elements. One is not total commitment. I may attack, Dominic may block. I attack, but I haven't really committed. Again, attack again. I haven't really committed here. Again, I haven't committed. Again, I commit. So I'm looking for the opportunity to commit. from here, again, the same situation, using Zen no Zen to interrupt the flow of the fight. When Dominic comes to move forward, boom, I'm here. I've interrupted the movement to thrust in. Same thing again, she may move in, up. I've stepped out to the side, completely take advantage, and then, of course, the cut. Up again, and I may cut again. And slice. Moving back. Those. Thank you. Various psychological forms, all the time when you're sparring, not to think about winning or losing, it's just the participation, looking for the opportunity to fight, looking for the opportunity to strike and win. The samurai, it was life or death. Another important element the samurai learned was not to attach any importance to living or being alive. They were totally committed, and they went into battle with the idea that they were already dead. They had nothing to lose, and they could throw off any inhibitions or thinking about losing something or missing something, and totally commit themselves to the fighting situation. In fighting postures, we always want to be in a situation where we control the opponent. Normally the tip of the sword, or in this case the bokken, always points to this area here. The distance is the crossing of the sword, in this instance here, and we'll always move, wherever it is, always move forward or back on that. If we have a greater distance, we may move back and assume another posture here. But this is always at a distance. We may assume this posture here as well, again, from a distance. Sometimes we may move forward, ready to strike from this area here. There. We're very unlikely to adopt a position like that, although we could still use it for striking from here. Sometimes the sword was kept in this position here, but again at a distance, moving forward, and strike. From here, moving forward to block and strike. Moving forward to block and strike. Always the basic position we always return to is this one here. Sometimes we do it this way, sometimes we bring it to here. Very rarely do we ever have a one hand. If we only use a one hand if the hand was injured. Only situation is that is up, this position here, ready for the striking position, up, down, there, from this position here, down, there. Returning always here, ready for the fight. Always hanging it here, always loose, always relaxed, shoulders relaxed, legs relaxed, weight slightly forward, and looking at the opponent. There. General basic fighting postures and positions. The optimum area of striking with the samurai sword is about 2/3 up, around about this distance there. We can always tell an old samurai sword, a well-used one, with the various nicks moving along in this area here, strike marks here. We don't want to strike with the end here. We want to strike straight in here. This allows a solid hit and a push. We want to deflect also using this area here, as it's strong and the strongest part of the sword and flexible. This area is not so strong. This area is much more rigid. This area has the greatest flex in it for hitting and blocking and striking. So we're trying to use this area here in controlling everything, for striking up, for moving down. Now, one feature is the kiai. In kendo training, in actual combat, the samurai would shout anything. They'd scream anything they like. But in kendo training, we use correct terminology. When we cut for the head, we shout men this way. Now, to score in kendo, we have to cut cleanly, we have to call the cut, and we have to slice. All three elements have to be in place, otherwise it's called a no point. So we have to cut cleanly, call the point as we cut men, and slice to gain the point. Cutting here is kote, cutting on this area here. Cutting under here is do. Thrusting is ski. Okay, ski. There. ski, men, kote, do. And we would shout them out as we did it. So if we were cutting, if I borrow Dominique again, please. Now raise your hands, please. From here, if we were cutting here, from this way, up, we bring it here, we would say, as we cut. And then we would thrust through, stepping back. I use this part here, across here, to strike in. So if I'm moving here, and I've opened it up, I'm striking this one, I'd be saying, cut. I'm coming back. Now, please go slowly when you're doing these techniques. From this position here, only cut slow, especially with a walking like that. Up again. Lift the sword up. Up. Now we have this cut. Kote, which is striking there. That position there. Sometimes we have kote on here. And then down. Up. From here, we strike here. Kote, again, is the call. Normally after kote, we use a reverse slice. There. Now, Dominique is a complete beginner with Kendo, and we can see the way she holds the sword is not the same. She doesn't have the same fluency of movement that I have, having trained in it, and you must expect to be similar to Dominique when you start. As you practice these moves, you'll become more and more fluent and more confident. As you gain confidence in the techniques and the movements, you'll gain strength in the wrists and the forearms and the rest of the body. And once you have gained that, it's probably a good time to move on and join a Kendo club.